gun. Ramos looking like he's got one more good run. Sips a little shaky, but his heart is still true. Oh, how that dog loves hunting with me and you. Sporting Dog Adventures, run, boy, run. Everything you need is here under the sun.
The Sporting Dog Adventures podcast is proudly brought to you by Soggy Acres Retrievers. Remember, everyone deserves a Soggy dog.
Hey, welcome to the Sporting Dog Adventures podcast. So, we had the HRC Grand, and two of my dogs went and ran. One of them passed, so we now have two dogs with one pass. And I thought we'd have A.G. Shaw back to talk about the Grand, what it was like this year, how the dogs did, and all of that great stuff. So welcome back, A.G. Shaw of Hardcore Retrievers. How you doing?
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. We started off... we headed down for pre-training a week before the Grand, met up with a bunch of guys. There was probably 6 or 7 of us. We had 44 dogs in pre-training. We spent the week doing that. It was the cool thing about doing the pre-training is it gets the dogs set and ready to go for the Grand. They think they're at a test every day. So by the time you get to the real deal, they walk out, don't even realize they're not test-wise at all. So with 40, we may only run once a day, but having 44 dogs gives us that experience that we can't get, just training by ourselves and stuff like that.
So what percentage of those 44 dogs that ran then passed?
I think we had about 12 or 14 that passed out of that.
So around 30%?
Yeah.
And that was about what passed the overall test?
Yeah, I think it was about 25% passed the overall test. So it was,
how many dogs ran?
We were just shy of 800. I think it was 788 or something like that actually were entered. I don't know, between the dogs that came in heat and stuff like that beforehand, I don't know how many scratches there were, but that's what we started with, was 788 dogs.
So now people listening aren't going to probably have knowledge about the Grand. They're listening to learn about it. You're not running 800 dogs in one test in a day.
No, so because we had 800 dogs, So when I first started running the Grand, we had 4 flights, and so every dog would run the same test throughout those 4 days. So we had, usually your dog would run one test a day unless they got backed up. So with 800 dogs, they went to 8 flights. So, it was just a draw on which flight you got and which circle you ran for those. Out of those 8 flights, you ran 4, if that makes sense. And those 4 flights are... There's a water test, a land test, water test, land test. And then on our 5th series, after you pass all those, you do an upland. So where you go out and we have an honor walk-up where you honor the dog's work, and then you get the chance to go up and retrieve that bird, and then you go out in the field and we flush 1 pheasant. So we have to, and then on that, we have to engage the bird, shoot it. The dog has to sit, watch the bird either get shot, land, or fly away. So that's the 5th series. So, but the rest is just a regular kind of a duck hunt scenario. So
you ran my dog Ace, and you ran Tank. Mm-hmm. How did they do?
They both were doing really well. Our first series, I think we drew. Well, I know we drew by the statistics the hardest test. Our first series, and both dogs did well. Ace had a handle on one of the marks.
And what's a handle?
So that's where the dog gets a little confused out there sometimes, or gets stuck to whatever the test scenario was. And you hit the whistle and you start handling the dog to put him on the bird. You can only get one of those in the Grand out of the 4 days.
So you only have one time where the dog doesn't just run out and pick up a bird that went down and come back. You have one time where, and this is for the listeners, where the dog is not in the area of the fall or it's offline, you're hitting the whistle, and then you're directing them with hand signals to that bird.
Correct, exactly.
And you only get one of those out of 5 days.
We only get one of those. So generally, the first few days, the judges will tell you to put him on the bird if he's in the wrong area. We don't usually whistle. We don't want to burn that thing. We do a lot of hoping and praying that he picks up the bird and wait for the judges to tell us to do something different. And then again, you only get one of those, and you only get one little flub on a blind where you're giving hand signals, the dog goes the wrong way or something like that.
And that's called a refusal, and a refusal being where the dog is not taking the correct direction that you casted them or directed them to.
Correct. Yeah, the dog's not improving his line to the blind or the distance to the blind. So you can only have one or the other during the 4 days of the Grand. So once you're on ones, you got to be clean the rest of the way. Ones is you get twos if you're solid. Ones if you have a little mistake. If you really screw up, you get a 0. You're done. You're failed.
Okay.
So
Ace had a 1.
A 1 on the first day. Yep. Second day, he did great on the marks, picked everything up, and they threw a diversion behind us, and he didn't see it go down. So he thought the diversion or whatever I was sending to him was out in the area where the marks were. And I couldn't get him to go up there. And it was kind of a common theme for for fast dogs that ran real fast. They didn't see the diversion come off. So we just couldn't get that done. But he did great on the test, though. So that was kind of a heartbreaker at that point. So I thought Ace was probably my strongest dog on the truck. And when I lost him, it was a little devastating. So, and then Tank did great the first day.
Tank was one of the weaker dogs he had on the truck.
Tank I was concerned about. I was like, he's young, I don't know how this is going to go. And he smoked every test we had. So it was, one time I sent him on a bird and he went about 30 degrees the wrong way and did like an S-shaped run to the bird. But he knew where he was going. I think he just wanted to see what was out there. So, or give me a little bit of a heart attack. But he smoked every test we had. And I was really concerned with Tank going into the upland because he was braking or moving after the bird would flush. All training before we even left for the Grand. And I was like, I don't know if we get that far, if we're going to get through that. But, man, that bird went up. I shot it with the blank. The gunners engaged it. It fell, 60, 80 yards away. And Tank sat there, watched, waited for me to call, and he went and retrieved it, and he passed the Grand with flying colors. So he's quite the machine.
So now both dogs have one pass. Ace passed last fall. Tank passed this fall. There was no spring one. So we need one more pass.
You need one more pass and a few points, and you'll have a Grand Hunting Retriever champion. And the nice thing about HRC is once you have your finished title, or he's a Hunting Retriever champion, you're automatically qualified for the Grand for the rest of the dog's life. And to become a Grand champion, you have to pass the Grand twice in the dog's lifetime.
So Pickett's going to be 13 next year, and he's got his finished title. He said he wants to run.
I think it would be a great thing for him to run.
Do they have like a senior circuit?
Yeah, he maybe needs some ibuprofen or something after that one. But it's really demanding on the dogs. Just the athletic ability they need to pass and to be in great shape is the key. A lot of the tests are designed to wear down the dog, so they start making the refusals and stuff like that when you're running the blind. They're so exhausted from the hard work of, it's generally set up in running water. It might be really muddy and hard on the dogs to get to the marks and stuff like that if you're doing a water series. So they're tired, and only the dogs in really good shape can get through that.
Now I believe you ran what? You had 6 dogs, but one was in season.
Yep.
She came into heat, so you couldn't run that dog because they do not let you run dogs that are in heat for obvious reasons.
Correct, yeah.
And then the other 2 dogs, you had one that didn't make it, and you had another one, Jim Cawhey's dog, that passed Boomer.
Yep. So Boomer got 1s on the first day. So, you're carrying that extra stress that we can't make mistakes the rest of the time. He did great all the way through. The upland, he's a pretty high-strung dog, and when we did the upland, he started getting excited, and he was like, "Oh, we're going hunting! I know what I do here!" And jumping up and down and stuff like that. And out of all the dogs and all the birds that I get, he flushes his bird. I shoot the popper, and the bird comes down, doesn't get shot. It literally just comes down 20 yards in front of him. So I'm like, he's either going to break or I'm going to call him back. So I called him back to me right away, and that counted as my flush because I engaged him with the blank. And the gunners never got their shot off because the bird came down so quick. So, but and then we just quartered out of the field, and he got his pass. But he had trouble the first day on the marks. The first day was a hip pocket mark where one mark lands where the other one takes off at, and it was out about 160 yards, so it was very tight because of the distance. So a lot of dogs were having trouble, and that was what was eating up a lot of my dogs on my truck, and everybody else's crew was really hurting from our first day. We had, I think, probably close to 80% of the dogs that left that first day in my flight had ones going through, so the dogs that were clean did real well.
So when is the next Grand then being run?
I believe it is the end of April, and I'm not sure where we're at for that one. I have to look and check on that one.
They're always in the central part of the country.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the south. So we're I know that. So I'm so excited to be through the first Grand. I haven't worried about the second one yet. So.
Well, that is fantastic. Hopefully we will check in with you before that one when Ace and Tank triumphantly return, and assuming that we're going to get our second pass and get this done with. That would be awesome. Hopefully Boomer too. It'd be neat to have all three of those dogs get their second pass. But we'll catch up with you again next spring. Now, what I want to do next after this break is we'll talk about, I guess, some things that you learned as a trainer at the Grand. And then after that, I wanted to talk to you about what you do with your dogs in the off season when you take them hunting. If it's any different when you're going to run a dog competitively or not. So stay tuned for that after this. This part of the podcast is brought to you proudly by Mech Outdoors. Hey, welcome back to our training tips. So we have A.G. Shaw still here. He just got back from successfully running my dog Tank through a Grand Pass. And I wanted to talk to him about something on the training side. So A.G., I will ask you, is there anything that you saw training-wise that you would do different, add, or emphasize more before your next run of the Grand?
Well, I think this time we did a little bit more pre-training on upland than we usually do. Usually we kind of do a crash course the night or two before we're going to run the test. This time, about a month before, I started training the dogs for upland. And for me, going into the upland, knowing what the dogs were going to do was a much more fun experience and a calmer experience than usually. You're kind of shaking, and it's the 5th series, and it's the last little part. And so that's one thing that I did different this year. I think the pre-training is a huge deal in getting big groups together and stuff like that, and getting the dogs exposed to that. So that's probably something I'll add more of this year. I do a lot of small group training and stuff like that, but try to get larger groups together and have the dogs exposed to that atmosphere of the excitement of everybody being around and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know a lot of field trial pros. They'll actually join clubs that have grounds, and then they'll train together, and they'll stake their dogs out, which staking your dog out is where you're basically pounding a big stake in the ground, and then the dog is on a leash so that they can't run away. You're not necessarily doing that so they're out of the trailer, because the trailers they have air moving through them and they're very cool. You're doing that so the dog is part of the circus. I always tell people that if you're going to run a hunt test, make sure the first time they're not around that circus, or the first time they're around the circus is not at the first test. Because I still remember I took my first dog and I'm like, man, my dog's going to do so well. And she just about tore the blind down when I was in the holding blind because she was so excited.
Yep, exactly. And that is, even the simplest things like using holding blinds. I mean, we don't do that a lot in training because we're in a hurry to get set up, get the dog out and run them. But if you set up those holding blinds, those dogs get so used to them that makes for a much calmer experience when you're going to the line and the dog's relaxed, you're relaxed, and things go a little smoother then.
So if someone wanted to do group training and they were hunting or they were training basically by themselves, what would they do to try to create that atmosphere?
I'd definitely join a club, like you said. There's a lot of great clubs around the country in HRC or AKC, and there's a lot of people that are willing to help you. Otherwise, if you got a group of guys that you all get together and train, that's what it's about. If you can get 6, 8, 10 guys together and you all got dogs and you want to do some hunting training, it's the way to get it done.
Yeah, I know personally when I've had people that want to run their dogs in competitively, I train generally for gun dogs, but occasionally I'll have someone that says, I really want to try to run my dog. I'll have my kid go with my 209 primer pistol. I'll put up a holding blind and I'll have him talk and quack on the duck call and shoot the pistol off a few times while I have the dog sitting next to me. And the whole time, I think what's key when you find someone that's inexperienced is talk to your dog. Yeah, talk to him when you're in the holding blind. Good dog, sit. Good, sit. And the other thing I like about an HRC test as opposed to an AKC test is you can talk to your dog up to, I believe, finished. When you're in the earlier stuff, I'll talk to the dog and run them purposely in those levels so that the dog doesn't break. Because, man, once you get a dog that breaks at a test and they understand they can, that's a tough one to fix.
Yeah. I think I started in HRC, so when I went over to AKC, that was a big jump for me, is not to talk to the dog. And because I have trained so long for HRC, I'm used to talking to the dog. The dog's used to hearing me on the line. So one of the tests, my dog broke. He's like, "Hey, you ain't saying sit. I'm out of here." But we're HRC, we can say sit all the way through and talk to the dog. But I mean, basically the difference between the two is, we have gunfire in the field in AKC, and we have guns that we're shooting in HRC next to us, so they don't have the sound out in the field. So we have to be able to talk to the dog to get them to move, hear, and heel, so they can see where the birds are coming out. Where in AKC, they can hear where the birds are coming out.
So that's a great tip. Next, I want to talk to you about what you do with your dogs during hunting so that they still are prepared to run competition. So we'll cover that after this. This portion of the podcast is proudly brought to you by Boucher Automotive in Janesville, Wisconsin. Welcome back to the hunting portion of the podcast. So, AG, now you probably have a lot of people that are running their dogs competitively and dabbling in that, but they're also, all of them are using them as hunting dogs because that's why we train.
Right.
What would you do and what do you do with your dogs when you're taking them out hunting to keep them so that basically that you aren't going to have them regress or take a step back?
Two different worlds. The hunt test world, we're trying to be exact and put them right on the spot because we know where that bird is. And when we're out hunting, sometimes that bird's crippled or whatever, so he's running. So we got to let the dog use his instinct there. But I think probably try to maintain the steadiness as best you can. If it's just you and your dog, it's a lot easier to maintain the steadiness in the blind or in the mud hut or whatever you're hunting out of. When you get your buddies who don't put as much effort into steadiness and their dogs are breaking constantly, sometimes you just want your dog to get a bird, so you let him go too. But if it's just you and a couple guys and it's your great hunter, your great competition dog and stuff like that, I'd work on steadiness. But if he's in the area of the bird, let him hunt. Where in a hunt test, we keep putting him on the bird with hand signals and stuff like that. But let the dog use his instinct and stuff like that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. It's funny because it brought something that I do different than a lot of trainers do. When I train dogs, I don't train dogs for competition. So I will literally let a dog struggle for a long time before I ever try to help them on a mark. And I know that when you're running hunt test dogs and you're in that world, you'll actually have a winger that will throw another bird to get them in an area, or you'll have someone that will call their attention and throw a bumper. I don't do that. And that's honestly kind of interesting because I explain that to my clients. I try to give the dog as much perseverance as possible because I want them to not lose that. And that's something that you probably can do in hunting is letting them do that hunt longer. It's going to give them more perseverance, which is something they're graded on when they're in competition.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. You don't want the dog to give up. So what you're saying is the exact way how to make that dog stay in the field, stay in the hunt, and keep working it out and find the bird out of its own.
And that's what people don't understand. The term is popping, and popping is where the dog actually turns around and sits and looks at you like, all right, I can't find it. Where do I go? And you get downgraded on that too. So it's probably something you can strengthen your dog on for season, keeping in mind that you need to keep them so they don't get too loose, as in loose being where they're losing their obedience.
Correct. Yeah. And I think the popping is perfect thing to tell you that you're handling your dog way too much rather than letting him hunt. So yeah, exactly, Jeff.
I tell people when they've got their dog that when the dog's hunting, they need to just shut up. And it's funny because I say it blatantly. I'm like, just shut up. Don't talk. I'm like, have you ever hunted with the guy that sits there and tells your dog, hunt it up, hunt it up, hunt it up? They're like, yeah, everybody. I'm like, I know, everybody does that. I'm like, do you realize when you're yelling hunt it up to your dog, they're looking back at you going, where do you want me to go? Because that in their mind is they think that you're going to help them. I'm like, you hear people all the time when you're out at public grounds, hunt it up, hunt it up, hunt it up, hunt it up, hunt it up. They're almost like panicked. It's like the dog's out hunting. Let the damn dog hunt. That's what they're doing. Just shut up and let them go.
Yeah, exactly. Trust the dog. The dog probably knows where the bird is better than we do, So.
And I don't know how many times I've had a dog where I'm like, I've corrected dogs with collars where I'm like, damn dog, I'm like, get over here because I know where the bird is. And you're nicking the dog with a collar, and all of a sudden the dog's 50 yards to your left, and the dog brings the bird back. Yep. And you kind of feel a little bit like a dick. No, you are, because you didn't trust the dog. So exactly. Trusting the dog is a great phrase.
Yeah, when one of my first dogs, I learned the hard way because we were out pheasant hunting, and the dog wanted to go in the other field. And I'm like, no, they put the birds in this field. Well, I went with the dog, and the dog flushed a whole bunch of birds for me. So I learned to trust the dog right there in my early stages of this game. So that's my story on trusting the dog.
Well, that's it for this podcast. Thank you so much, Mr. A.G. Shaw of Hardcore Retrievers, for being on with us. It was great hearing how the dogs did at the Grand. Thanks,
Jeff, and thanks for letting me run your dogs. Appreciate it.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless.
Sporting dog adventures, run, boy, run. Everything you need is here under the sun.